Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Black and Rowdy Show. I'm your host, Black and Rowdy. So good to see all of you. So we have a juicy topic. The topic is abolishing the police. So abolition. So there's a lot of talk about it lately, and I thought we could kind of hash it out here with different opinions. I don't know how everyone feels about it, but it's going to be fun to talk about it and see if it will work in the future, or maybe it doesn't work. So, all right. Hi, everybody. Turn on your video and your audio. Thank you for coming.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. So we got a packed house today, and I thought the topic could be police abolition. And I'm just going to kind of briefly go through what that means, because some might not have an idea of what that actually means. So what that means is the process that requires communities to create alternatives to policing. So instead of having police officers, you have counselors, or, that kind of thing. Some type of alternative instead of having police officers. And this has already been in the works, right? But it definitely kind of resurrected after all of the different Blacks that were killed. And people were like, okay, abolition, like this needs to happen because of all of this. So my question would be, would this work? Would abolition, would abolishing the police, would this work? So that would be one question that we can answer. Another one is defunding the police. So a lot of talk behind that. What does defunding mean? Defunding means they ain't getting millions of dollars. Means that money is going to be allocated to the community in some way, in education, in housing, in other areas instead of more police, So does it work? Does it not work? I'm curious to know what everybody's thoughts are. But the first thing we're going to talk about is defunding the police, and then we'll move to abolition. So anybody can kind of jump in and say what they think about defunding the police. Will it work? Do you think it will work? Anybody want to chime in?
I'm not in love with the phrase defunding. I like the idea behind it. Hello?
Oh, I think you're frozen.
We can hear you though.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you guys are frozen too. I don't know what's going on. Must be my connection or something.
Okay.
You can just talk. We can hear you.
Yeah, but I'm not in love with the phrasing of it, of defunding the police. I just think it's okay. There you guys are. Sorry about that. No, I'm not in love with the phrasing of it. I like the idea behind it. I'm more, but just I've always said that people not all the time, but the left is always really bad at branding and advertising. But I like the idea of demilitarizing the police. I don't think that we need, obviously in certain areas you might need them, but I don't think that every police department in America or sheriff's department in America should have guys with AR-15s and body armor and these little armored personnel carriers. I don't think that's necessary. I've seen them in small towns. Why would a small town with a population of less than 100,000 need an APC and guys with flashbangs? And I understand SWATs and things like that, SWAT teams and things like that, special response teams. But I am for demilitarizing the police. I am for weeding out the bad apples, rethinking the way we train police, the way we hire them. My understanding, I have cousins in Los Angeles. They say that when you join the LAPD, the psych eval is one of the last things they make you do. I think that should be one of the first things, the psych eval. They shouldn't be the last thing, But as far as defunding, I don't think this idea, we're seeing it here in New York now. Well, let's just take some money away from the police. It's like, well, yeah, but what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to, what are you going to do with that money? Where are you going to reallocate to you, and also how are you going to make up for that shortfall in that budget? Because just simply taking away money from the police is not going to solve everything.
Yeah. I have been the person screaming for community control police boards like all the time. Like I've sent letters. I sent the letter to Cuomo. I sent the letter to Black Lives Matter. It's almost like that's something that doesn't even get mentioned because people look at it like it's impossible. If I'm walking in the street and I feel like I'm getting hunted and nobody's going to help me, I'm going to be living in fear. Now, I saw an interview, I think it was on ABC, with one of the cops that was saying that the way he polices is he looks at people and he says, well, if he looks too suspicious or he's running away, he's turning the corner when he sees me, then there must be a reason or there must be something that's happening or he must be committing a crime. That's the only way he's acting that way. So basically, the guy says that he lives by assumptions. That is what he does as a police officer. He looks and he assumes, and then he goes by that, not understanding the trauma that the Black community tends to have, or the poor community, period, tends to have when it comes to the police. Now, community control police boards should work where you hire a civil rights lawyer, and a civil rights lawyer works in said community and is in charge of hiring independent investigators that have no connection to the police. So if a situation happens in the street with a colored person of color and they feel it's unfair, they go to the police board, the community control police board, they file a complaint, and the investigator that is specifically chosen by a civil rights lawyer, has to be a civil rights lawyer to do it, goes and investigates the situation. And if there's a crime and if there's something that is found that is unlawful, the cop should be basically tried, and qualified immunity should be eliminated everywhere across the board in every state. That shouldn't even be allowed anymore. And the fact that there's this fear of pushing something like that, I look at it as, I don't want to feel like I'm prey. I don't want to feel like I can get shot at any moment. I want to feel like I have a say. The government talks about checks and balances, but yet there's no check with the police. Why? Because the unions pay X amount of dollars to the politicians. So the politicians are saying, well, the unions are too powerful, the unions are too strong. As long as there's no check to them, these things are going to happen over and over and over and over again. Politicians are going to lie and they're going to say, oh, we have police reform and jail reform, and none of those things are going to happen because they'll give you token gestures by telling you we're going to let a few Black people out and that's it. Now, I have sent, like I said, I have sent letters about it because I think that is a start. I'm not saying it's a perfect plan that it's gonna work and save everybody and it's gonna stop the killings, but at least it's a set plan. People say defund the police, and I hear nothing else besides that. So you leave room for interpretation now, where whatever right-wing media is going to tell you, oh, they want to take all the money and they want to allow murderers and killers to walk around, and oh, look, now they all want to kill each other because there's not enough cops. You leave room for that type of interpretation. Now, the question that I have always asked is, why can something like community control police boards exist? Why do the politicians do not think? Not only they don't think about, I'm pretty sure they know, they have an idea, but they choose not to go that direction. They choose not to go to the direction of neighborhood watch. There's neighborhood watches in the United States still, dependent on the city, dependent on the town. They have these things, but they take the money away from education. They take the money away from these type of programs, and then leave people thinking, well, what are we going to do? Somebody going to die. Justice never is going to be served. Oh, here we go again. Another person dies. Look what we're going to see in the news. Now we got to protest just so the cop can be set free 2-3 months later because things have died down and the protests have died down. I'm sorry I'm ranting, but These
Yeah,
are just
it's
things
I get
that
what
are
you're saying.
frustrating.
it makes perfect sense. It's a cycle that's been happening in this country, right? Like there's been no real change, and that's what you're saying. So it makes sense. But I agree with what you're saying. Like as far as I agree with what Brian was saying about maybe changing the way you say it.
Titling.
I don't know. I mean, but that is the bottom line. Like that's what you're doing. You're taking funds and you're allocating it somewhere else. I mean, what other way would you say it
But
to make people feel better about it?
But to his earlier point, to Michael's earlier point, it's just that phrase, like that hashtag defund the police, and then nothing else. You have to, if you're not going to elaborate on that, people are going to just latch onto that and say, well, you want to take money from the cops, and that's gonna result in rampant crime. You know, and you have to elaborate. What do you want to do? Do you want to reinvest in mental health? Do you want to reinvest in community services, after school programs? In New York, I don't know about other parts of the country, we have something called auxiliary police, guys that don't carry guns. That's something to look into. There's a lot of interactions that happen with the police that don't require an armed police officer. You know, maybe you have like a taser or something, or like a little mace or something like that. But there's a homeless guy that sleeps in front of my house sometimes. He's harmless. I don't need a police officer with a gun doesn't have to deal with this guy. That's unnecessary. It's excessive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the defund the police. Yeah, it's take the money away, but what are you going to do with that money?
Yeah, I think when people talk about it, like different like politicians that are backing it, they usually have the disclaimer. They'll say, we want to defund the police. This is where we want to allocate it to. Like, for instance, Kristen Jordan talks about, taking that money and putting it into housing, putting it into education. To be more specific, I guess you would just ask her more questions about what does that mean precisely, right? You could ask her more detailed questions, but I think every time I've heard defund the police, I've always heard it with some type of disclaimer along with it. But
I don't think you really need to just focus on defund the police. As somebody who works for the state of New York, there's a lot of money being thrown around. It costs $60 million, about $30 million to renovate the building I work in. I work in that building every day. I used to. Did not cost $30 million. There's somebody who walk around with $20 million in their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing too. This idea that the money only has to come from the police. You can take it from other areas. The section of the highway by where I live, it's like $25 million just to fix a small section. It did not cost $25 million. There's a lot of bloat there, but that's like a bigger question, a bigger issue. But that's another thing too. It doesn't have to only come from the police. It really doesn't. You can get the money. You can move the money around in other ways.
Okay, that's a thought. I didn't think about that. Anyone else as far as defunding before we move to abolition? What about Texas? Like, I'm curious. How is Texas when it comes to the policing?
That's not gonna fly in New York. Taxes are already high.
Yeah.
Whole thought process.
Anything with raising taxes here in New York City is gonna be enough. You're gonna get pushed back. And again, to Mike's point, another thing nobody's talking about. Again, I work for the state and I'm also in a union. It is extremely difficult to fire a unionized government employee. Mm-hmm. It is you're better off just putting them in a corner by themselves and making sure they don't bother them. It is extremely difficult. And I work in an office. Imagine what it's like for someone like a cop, with one of the most powerful unions in the world, NYPD.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I can see how that could be beneficial in a positive way, but then I can see how that could be detrimental, especially for people in a higher position within the union. Like, that's crazy.
It's a double-edged sword, obviously.
It really is.
You have protection there, but at the same time, in any agency, any state or government agency, you're going to have people who are incompetent, who are liability, and in the case of the police, people who are literally costing human lives. And it's that blue wall. That blue wall is no joke. Just to get a guy suspended is almost impossible, let alone getting him fired.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the police is like I was telling Mike, is like the mafia. It's like
right.
they run like the mafia. They're like a big gang. They back each other. you know, they're taking stuff from people. You can't even get your stuff back. Like here in New York, they can just come and take your stuff and you can't get it back.
Search and seizure laws. Yeah.
Yeah, like stuff like that. Like that's
Texas too?
mafia.
No, Texas, they do the same thing.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
no,
you know,
it's very crazy. I feel like even going back to the defunding the police, it's gonna just have to, it's a whole restructuring process that would have to be done, and that's not something that's gonna happen anytime. Like it's not gonna happen overnight. Most definitely, if they're trying to do it right, it ain't gonna happen overnight, because it's almost like having to rework somebody's mindset. Mm-hmm. That's not an easy feat. But I don't even know where to begin as far as that goes. But it would definitely need a whole restructuring, because if it's just the same type of people, and when I say the same type of people, the same people with the people that have that same ideology when they go into the police force, if you put all them together again, if you bring new people in and they all have that same ideology as the previous police force, all you now have is just new faces, same issue, new faces. That's it. So it goes deeper than, yes, taking money and reallocating it, but it definitely goes deeper, and also demilitarizing it as well. But it definitely goes deeper as far as restructuring the whole police force, and that adds into the way they train too. But that goes deeper. But yeah, that would be an aspect that would have to be done as well. If we're going to start off with saying we need to defund the police, we also need to include that into the mix.
But like retraining, like as far as
like I'm gonna say the requirements, how you bring them in, what's required. I also agree with the whole that the mental side of things, because some of the people, they're not right in the head when they go into the police force, and then now you just gave them a gun.
They shouldn't even be working
honestly,
there.
That goes to the military too, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, like you're not, no. I mean,
yeah.
And honestly, some officers look at it almost like a game. Like we playing Call of Duty out here. No, these are people's human lives that that's not cool. I don't care who you are. It's not cool to shoot nobody down in the streets and then claim the infamous defense, I feared for my life. So you feared for your life 20 feet away? You fear for your life? Like, no.
With 5 other cops had their, guns drawn on an unarmed person. You feared for your life?
I always find that funny
Come
too.
on.
Like when they call cops out to a situation and it's one person and like you said, 5 cop cars. Okay.
Like
why is all of that needed?
Yeah. But meanwhile, there's massacres happening. And you don't feel for your life. This guy just killed 10
buildings
people
with rifles, and I'm just saying. I mean, you can't put a rifle in your back pocket unless it's I'm just. you see that person. Somebody saw that person, or those people. It's all it's ridiculous. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyone else have any lasting thoughts with the defunding? Because I'm going to move to abolition. I'm really curious to know what everybody's thought about that is.
I think defunding is the most important first step that we need to take. And I don't think it matters how we say it, because the right is always going to find a way to turn it around and make it something it's not. So, like, it doesn't really matter what, anyone on the left says about anything, because it's always turned into something else, because the right's all their tactics are just fear tactics, and it's easier to make people scared, and you don't have to really think about anything to be scared. So they just say, oh, they've taken away the police, now who's going to stop your daughter from being raped or something. It's like, police they don't prevent crime, they show up after a crime has been committed.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So that argument is like bogus.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the idea of different alternatives. So let's move to abolition. So I like the idea if, we're not calling the police on, a homeless guy acting crazy. We're going to call a different set of the police department. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be like phrased or whatever, but I like the idea of not having to call the police for every little thing. I do agree with that. Like, you shouldn't be calling the police for every little thing. The guy didn't pay the rent or whatever. Now we're calling the police.
You also shouldn't call the police if you feel like somebody else's child is bullying another child.
Yeah.
I personally have heard of that.
Absolutely not.
Really? So the police is 401?
Literally. They're there for everything. I do agree with that. Like that, there needs to be a change there for sure. But do you believe that abolition would work as far as just no police at all, and we're just gonna have other alternatives to taking care of things? Do you believe that will work in your community, in the U.S., in the state? What do you think? I think
I'm not saying. I'm not saying it's not possible.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, can you elaborate? Why don't you think it'll work?
You could, just the way humans are. I know it's going to be nihilistic, but I can't think of a civilization or a nation state in history that never had a military, that never had some sort of law enforcement type of force. Even in ancient times, you had like warriors and legions, whatever, to keep the peace. No, I don't think so. No. No. You could reform. You could restructure. You could rethink and redo how police are trained and recruited. You could talk about renegotiating union contracts. You could talk about ending qualified immunity, search and seizure laws. Things of that nature. Body cameras, actually make them use it. But as far as having no police whatsoever, I can't see that working in a place like Brooklyn, New York. I really can't. I'm sorry.
So first off, hey, how's everybody
I
doing?
will.
How y'all doing?
Hey,
What's going on, y'all? I'm assuming that y'all are talking about just completely doing away with law enforcement.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's insane. It's not only is it insane, it's not practical, it's not logical. It's as Brian just said, pretty much no civilization has ever had, well, no successful civilization has had no sort of law enforcement. You need law enforcement. There needs to be repercussions for those who break the rules. Anarchy is not. It's just not intelligent.
Okay, can I pause you right there? You said anarchies. Are you saying that abolition of the police is the same as anarchy?
Well, if we're talking about, so my understanding that there's two understandings of abolishing the police, which is one, which is literally abolishing the police, which I think I've heard people argue. I think that's a bit extreme, and like I said before, it's not practical. And there's the other argument where people are saying abolish, but then reconstruct. Now, do you want to have the second option? The second option is a bit more plausible. It has worked in, well, since we're on the East Coast, well, stuff for
Jersey.
But yeah, so Camden, New Jersey. But my understanding is that they had the New Jersey state troopers there temporarily, or just some sort of law enforcement temporarily, until they actually reconstructed their police department. So,
I'm sorry to cut in there, but from what I remember, the town went broke. The county went broke, and they literally had to abolish police because they literally couldn't pay anything. So they had to start over from scratch. That's my understanding. They had to start over from scratch. It wasn't like by choice. It was because we literally have no more money, and we got to start over from scratch. I'm sorry, but go on.
That I did not know. But I mean,
that's from what I remember. I could be wrong, but that's what I remember hearing.
I mean, because I was talking about, maybe we're talking about the same thing. I was talking about what happened with Camden, New Jersey.
Yeah, correct. Camden, New Jersey. Yes.
Okay, cool. So we're talking about the same thing. Yeah. So I mean, so even if you wanted to take Camden, first off, Camden, you could fit Camden in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. So the Bronx in itself the Bronx population wise, and I think size wise, is bigger than Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then you add along with other boroughs. So you add along with Brooklyn. Brooklyn is it's a city in itself. Obviously Manhattan. Manhattan is a city in itself. Queens is a city in itself. Staten Island, a city in itself. So it's not practical. Just like you would have to. There has to be a real plan in place for if you really want to take that road.
I think it's gonna be. It's not. I think you're getting the wrong impression. If somebody says we're going to abolish the police, that doesn't mean they're going to take the police off tomorrow and now we're just here wondering what's going on, right? It's a process, right? Kind of like, I understand what you're getting at, Will, but it is going to be a process because they understand that just taking police off with no alternative and everybody's just like, what's going to happen? Who am I supposed to call? That is crazy. That is anarchy, right? But there's a process that's going to happen to get to that point, right? So what I'm talking about is abolition. So once we've crossed the road to the process, now we're in abolition. Now I want you to think, would it work? Like, let's cut out the process. We already know there's going to be a process to get to there, right? So now let's think, will it work?
But the issue is, I'm sorry, the issue is words matter, and this is what I said earlier. Abolition literally means to cease, to stop something, to discontinue it. We're abolishing slavery, we're abolishing child labor, we're abolishing human trafficking. So you're right, if you're talking about doing a reset, like a hard reset, yes, I'm open to that. And a lot of people probably would be. But, you know, if you're talking about abolishing, they hear that word, and it's not about the left or right. People hear that word, and they automatically think, okay, you want to get rid of it, full stop. You know? And that's a problem. You're not going to get too much support for that. And not even talking about the right, but just even from people who are more in the middle or just the, you know, moderate. You know, they don't want to hear anything about abolishing or getting rid of the police. Much the same way that they don't want to hear anything about getting rid of Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare. You know, if you're talking about like a hard reset, we're going to just redo how we do policing in this country. Yeah, that's a different conversation. But when you say abolish, it's not, I don't want to say it's a dirty word, but that word has a lot of connotations there that a lot of people can't get past.
Yeah, that's why that's why, like earlier I said, you know, there's two understandings. As this Brian just pointed out, there's the understanding where you completely do away with it, that's the extreme. But I haven't really heard a lot of people argue that. So I've heard people, but you know, not a lot. And then there's so we abolish, but we reconstruct, which is more practical. But I said even before, like in New York City, New York City is huge.
Yeah.
And not only the size of New York City, but you have to take into account the police unions are very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So they are extremely powerful. They're pretty much in a lot of the higher ups, you know, within, I guess, you know, law enforcement, and they're there by the unions, you know. So that's something else that you have to take into consideration. There's a lot of power within these unions. So I know what you were saying before, like, you know, when I kind of get past the process, but like, I just, you know, like you have to take into consideration, okay, so how are you going to handle the unions? You know, like ultimately, it needs to be they need to be reformed. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
They need to be reformed. There needs to be young blood. A lot of the guys, a lot of the dinosaurs that are there, like just pretty much just the same thing with Congress. I feel like a lot of the dinosaurs there, they need to go. But a lot of the dinosaurs, they're protected by the union.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why a lot of things, when things happen, they just go into desk duty.
Yeah.
You know? So
I want to hear what others have to say as far as, do they think it's going to work? So Mike, Jason, Tanya, Arian, what do you think? I mean, I'm on the fence, to be honest with you. I'm on the fence with it. I'm not 100% about it either, but yeah.
I'm not 100% about it, yes, too, but I definitely would be leaning towards, it would definitely be, I'm all about restructuring completely. That goes for the unions too. And I think people, I mean, we're human beings, so people will naturally fear what they believe has perceived power or legit power. And that's all the more reason why that needs to be broken down, shaken up, like completely restructured. But to completely just, if it's completely abolishing it and there's no game plan after, there's no instance of restructuring, that aspect, that side of things, I don't think would work. I do feel like people will be on a power trip, because even once you put another person in, people, human beings, are most, not all, are naturally inclined to feel the need to have someone to look to. And so I feel like over time it would gravitate towards that. And then where's the accountability? Where's the checks and balances in that to prevent that person or those group of people from doing similar things that the previous organization, police force, have done? You know what I mean?
That is true.
So that's where the concern would be there too, for me personally. I mean, I'm just going to use the corporations and the workforce alone as a prime example of that, because I see people that be on the same level as me, and then they get in a position of power, and then it goes crazy. And that's just corporate work. That's not even talking about police and other people that have more control over a human's life, you know. But anywho, so I feel like it would have to definitely be, I think it could be possible if it's a situation of, yes, abolishing, followed behind with restructuring, and having a game plan within that restructuring, because it's going to be a lot of different avenues that we're going to have to touch on, not just the police. It just speaking on Will, and I think Brian mentioned the union alone, that's one you're going to have to tap into, and that's going to take, that's going to have to push, that's going to need to require a lot to push towards that, because there's going to be a lot of pushback against that naturally. People in power don't want to lose their power. They'll literally kill for it. So they do it all the time. So
yeah.
Legit.
It's
people
true
come
though.
up missing.
You got a
people
point.
come up missing, quote unquote, once they start speaking about something or saying something, they're conveniently gone.
Yep, that is so true. No, you got a point there. Like that's a good point. Like, I like what you said. You said that even if you take away the police, there's going to be some organization that's going to want some type of power, right? So that makes a lot of sense, but that's where the checks and balances come in, where we keep those people accountable, right? Accountability, and that's kind of what we're asking for with the police.
And it can't just be based on one organization doing it, because I feel like that's where it leaves room open for people to come in and take complete control. If you got more, and I don't know what the game plan would be to build this up, but I almost feel like, okay, I'm gonna use another, I guess, analogy. So like if you're in business, right, you're not gonna wanna have one accountant handling your money, right? Because that's how embezzling happens and a bunch of other stuff. Not always, but it can, right? No, you need somebody to check that person and another person to check that person too, right? So I feel like even in doing something with the police and restructuring, it has to be a lot of different checks and balances, not a lot, but it has to be a fine-tuned plan or structure for checks and balances, like legit, real checks and balances, because
community control police boards.
I'm not opposed to that. I like what you were saying there. That would almost be a discussion that I would want to have with people who are really about a change of that nature, and let's go deeper. That's how I would feel. Let's go deeper with that option, because I like the option.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. That's something that could happen now. Like there's no reason for that not to be
happening.
Yeah, that should already be happening, right? But Mike, what do you think? What do you think about abolition?
Well, I was thinking about I forgot who said it earlier, but yeah, police should always be the last resort. It's like I know you're a teacher, like the first thing you don't think of when you deal with a student is, I'm gonna call your parents right now. Like that's not the first thing you're doing. That's
Right.
normally a last resort when the situation is
Yeah.
getting too uncontrollable and is out of hand. And like the abolition part, I like everybody already said why it wouldn't work, and there needs to be a restructuring, and I agree with all of those things. But I also feel that it needs to start from the particular neighborhoods, because I started thinking like, who actually represents our neighborhood? Like
Right.
I was talking about how I want to run for district leader next year, and I was like, okay,
Oh,
Hey,
what
let's
is
go.
the
nice.
yeah, well, what is the job of a district leader? And then I saw, oh, you help with as far as like polling and bringing awareness to whichever whoever's running at the moment, and also help with picking a judge, or picking a judge to represent the particular area. And then I said to myself, damn, this job needs to expand a little more, because I'm thinking to myself, in my neighborhood, who is the person that goes to my neighborhood and other neighborhoods around me to figure out, okay, what is needed here? Who's the buffer? We don't have buffers, and that's a whole nother thing. It's like, okay, who's the one that is really saying, who's the one that's really speaking out for us? Because I don't think we have people that speak out for us, even in the smaller level of just the neighborhood. Forget the state, forget the country, but just the neighborhoods alone. It's like, okay, why is that not a situation that is being pushed for? I think if there was some form of a neighborhood watch in these neighborhoods, some form of just who to reach out to before you decide to run and call the cops, or who has a rapport with people in the neighborhood that feel comfortable. Because I've spoken to cops that are retired. I've spoken to cops that are actually still on the job, and the one thing that always caught my ear was a cop would say, well, I don't live in this neighborhood. Like, what do you
Yeah.
want me
But
to
they
do?
don't feel
What do you expect
invested.
me to
Yeah,
do?
that's not in their jurisdiction, so they'll just say go to that jurisdiction if you have a problem. I've literally heard that from a woman who had gotten stabbed. She was talking at a rally, and she went to the police station, and they told her, "Oh, I'm sorry, but you got to go to the other police station closer to where you got stabbed."
Well,
It's
don't
like,
mind me.
it's just
Don't mind me and my stab
bizarre. Like,
wound.
yeah, literally. That came
Wow.
right from the horse's mouth. She said that. I was just blown away by that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest problems. Because when I was
Hmm.
talking to a specific cop who I know who's retired, he was explaining to me how this is the way cops think. Like I don't live here. I live
Yeah.
in Long Island. I live in Staten Island. Like yo, if something happens here, I'm gonna work to defend myself first before I do anything for anybody else.
Mm.
So it's to the point where it really is just well, we're just walking around to kind of like save face and get paid, just so me alone being here is supposed to deter whatever situation. So if that's the way cops really are thinking, then okay, what are we doing in our neighborhoods? Who's speaking in our neighborhoods? Who's the person that's bringing the awareness even in our particular neighborhoods? I don't even think we have that. And then I think about how politicians don't come to our neighborhoods. These big politicians that are on CNN and Fox, which I don't watch, but and MSNBC, like they don't come to our neighborhoods either because they feel A, we're not important, or B, our situations don't affect them. It's not directly towards them.
Right.
So now we have to look at even the situation with the police. Who is the buffer that is speaking to the police? The unions is a big monster, and we've talked about that. And that's a battle that it's hard to fight somebody when you know they're paying off the people that are supposed to make the changes. So it's like, how you gonna make the changes when they dropping ducats to Cuomo and De Blasio? Like it's tough. That's New York, but it's tough. It's tough to say, oh, we're gonna have some real change if we all know that the money is going to them, because yeah, they're gonna say whatever they want to say on TV. But then again, you look at the politicians. You think the politicians are as affected? No, they just as disconnected as the police are, because they don't live in these neighborhoods. So I think it has to start within the neighborhood. You know what I mean? There has to be some form of organization within the neighborhoods. Now, do I have a particular answer or a thought? Not right now. That's why I thought about the district leader. I said, man, like, this is nothing. Like, there needs to be more things added to this thing, because you're not really leading the district. You're a little bit disconnected here. And I'm just looking at the job requirement and the things you have to do. I'm like, you're really doing nothing until it's time for voting and starting out groups and passing out flyers and all that. And there just needs to be a little more. Somebody needs to be willing to put themselves out there to that level to truly represent the neighborhood first, and have that buffer and have that conversation within the neighborhoods before they even call the cops. Because it's easy to call the cops when you don't know anybody in the neighborhood, or you don't really understand, or you haven't grown up with people in the neighborhood. And the difference between now, like, my family is Honduran, and I've lived in Honduras for whatever amount of years, and I've stayed summers there. One thing I've always appreciated about Honduras is when you're in a small town, everybody knows each other. Everybody knows everybody. Mama, so they know that when you walk in there, if you are not new, if you haven't lived there, they know. Everybody in the town knows you have not lived there. And I think that's one thing that we don't have, because, hey, we're in a big city. There's such a disconnect, but somebody's going to have to bring that into the neighborhoods first, and then spread it out, and then have that buffer to speak to the police. The police should always be the last option, because they're coming in. Some of them come in like, okay, who am I going to shoot and kill?
Right.
You know, like not to be long-winded, but there was a situation that happened to me where I was waiting outside of an after school for somebody, and 6 police officers came out of, this was a few years ago around the Lower East Side. So 6 police officers come out of the car and they go, "What are you doing standing there?" Now, I was only standing there for 20 minutes. You know how people tell you, "Oh, I'm coming right now," but they really not.
Yeah.
So I was standing there for 20 minutes. I'm coming out right now. So the cop doesn't believe me when I say I'm waiting for somebody. They bring me into the building, and they end up asking the person, "You sure he's not committing a crime? You could tell me. Is he a criminal? Is he robbing people? What is he doing? Is he stalking you? Come on. There has to be something." That's what the cop said to the person when they pulled the person aside.
Wow.
That's what the cop said, because he was so thirsty to find a reason to arrest me, to find a reason to basically do something, to either hit me or arrest me. He was so thirsty. And I found out about that after the fact. There are cops that do that. There are cops that think it's the Wild Wild West, it is World War III, and this is why they have to be the last option. They should never be the first option.
No.
I also feel like even in domestic abuse situations, they always, I've witnessed someone dealing with this where they're like, well, which one's going to go to jail? So either y'all going to work this out, or we taking one of y'all to jail. Like, I've heard a cop tell that to a couple. Like, so let's not forget, you can't help and be a mediator. Like, you just literally just gonna say, like, look, in other words, to me, what I heard when I heard that when I was younger is, as a cop, I don't want to be here. You call me for nothing. So if I'm gonna be out here, I need to have a reason to be out here. And to them, their only reason for being out in any situation is to feel like, and this is just me thinking the way I think, okay? I need to either beat somebody down, kill somebody, or take them to jail.
Yeah.
And that's not all you're there for as police. But
I think the whole mentality. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, but the police can't be counselors. They can't be like these type of things. Like that is why they have to be the last option. But it's almost like I've heard this from a police officer. They feel frustrated because in their minds, at least the ones that are good, and that's always been an argument with police officers, because I say there are good cops. It's the institution that's bad, and when you support the institution by proxy, you're bad. But that's a whole nother story. I've heard them specifically tell me, like, why are they calling me for this? I'm not going to be a counselor. I'm not here to hold your hand. Because they're not really that
They're not.
invested
No,
You're
they're
right.
not.
in
Yeah.
in the job. They want the check more than they want to do the job. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is so true.
Like,
All right, well,
like,
we'll have to wrap it up. But any closing comments? That's quick and
Quick
to the
closing
point.
comments. Yeah.
Quick closing comments.
No more stat-based policing. I live in New York City. We have something called quotas, Task Force Tuesday, TNT, all that good stuff.
Yes.
Get rid of that. Your job should not be based on how many collars you get, quote unquote. You know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So get rid of stat-based policing and quota-based policing. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's a
Very
that's
good point.
That's number one. That's literally number one. Go ahead.
I guess one last I guess one quick point is, I guess if we were going to discuss, I guess, reconstruction and just reconstructing, well, reforming and restructuring the various police departments, they have to reform the hiring process, because I think, just making it a quick story, I went, like 4 years ago, I was up for a 911 operator position, right? And pretty much they throw you through a ringer. They ask you about a whole bunch of questions, and they just like random things about your past, like how many fights you got, like just
They
random.
did that to me too.
And I didn't get the job. And they pretty much tell me, oh, we found something in your background that we didn't like. I'm like, all right, but then you see just the process for other people who are trying to be cops, and you kind of find out that a lot of that is nepotism. Like, a lot of that is, hey, they know somebody.
Oh yeah.
They will make sure you get in. Don't worry about that. We'll tell you what to say in the psych test. You do this. Don't tell them this. Don't tell them that. Whatever. Just imagine if people really went through individuals' lives, just took it like an objective approach. And like, okay, so this isn't right. This doesn't sound right. Like, how many people would be weeded out? Like, how many
A lot.
just warped personalities that we have.
Yeah.
Just one quick point. I went to school with somebody in college. I went with this kid who was that he told me that he was affiliated with a local gang, right? And then a couple of years later, he leaves college. He's a freaking cop. How does that work?
Yeah.
Well, man was just like throwing sets up and everything else like that. Next thing, hey, what's going on? I'm like, so like you tell like there's something off.
Yeah.
So like that's pretty much my point. But
Yeah, that's crazy. So anyway, so to finish off, I guess just do your research. If you're looking for, more information about defunding and abolishing and this and that, I say do your research before you pick a side and just really know what that actually means. I'm definitely for allocating funds. Absolutely. I think that should be a must. I'm totally for the boards. I'm totally for, getting rid of quotas and, just all of those things that should already be gone anyway. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.